Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we are going to start the week off by taking a look at the biggest transit of the week, which is coming at the end of the week into the weekend, but it is something that will be building over the course of the week, and that is Mars's square to Uranus. Mars is in Aquarius, and it is moving into a square with Uranus and Taurus. At the start of this week, we're just coming off from Venus's square, and we know that the lovers, Mars and Venus, have been moving together in the sign of Aquarius after they conjoined. They both went through squares to Jupiter. Now they are both going through squares to Uranus. And so we are going to try to capture that archetypal essence in today's talk and also give us, a few ideas about trying to understand why this transit is often very feared. This is one of the more feared transits along with Mars-Pluto transits. And there are good reasons for that. I mean, it certainly has some significations that can be, a little ominous, I guess. But I want to try to dispel some of that with a story I'm going to tell you today that I think will, at the very least, give us a broader perspective and maybe pacify some of those anxieties that can come up, while also giving us a really good archetypal understanding of the energy of Mars-Uranus. And again, like I said, we're going to see this growing as the week goes on, really sort of popping by the weekend. So we're going to do a few videos on Mars-Uranus this week. We'll also be looking as the week goes on at the new moon that's coming up in Pisces, again, over the weekend. So a lot of this is going to be prep work we're doing for transits that come in at the end of the week. Anyway, that's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your comments and reflections in the comment section. We really appreciate hearing from you guys. It helps the channel to grow. You know that there are so many ways to tap the like button. And your originality has been amazing. Some of it disgusting. So, some of you guys went right into the rated X section. You went through the weird doors at the back of the video room. You guys remember Blockbuster Videos or whatever, those video stores? God, isn't that funny that we don't even have those anymore? Anyhow, so tell me, how are you liking the like button today? I really enjoy hearing what you guys have to say. You can find a transcript of any of my daily talks on the website, including all of the repeats of the most offensive or stupid things that I have to say. That's at nightlightastrology.com. I'm promoting a few things this week. Chief among them is my wife's Herbal apprenticeship program. At the end of today's video, if you stick around afterward, and the same as last week, there's an interview that I did with her that's tagged on after today's content ends. You can learn more about her Herbal Foundations apprenticeship that begins at the end of April, which we do have, as we have for all of our programs, need-based tuition available, very affordable pricing at different tiers for people so that you're not priced out if you want to study, as well as an early bird rate for those who can afford it. So you can go to skyhouseherbs.com. And when you go to skyhouseherbs.com, click on the courses, go to Herbal Foundations Apprenticeship, scroll down to learn more about it. Everything is module based and everything is pre-recorded with set times that Ashley will be meeting with students for Q&A in between the modules that are pre-recorded. This is Ashley's return to teaching herbal medicine apprenticeships for the first time for a couple of years. She's been on maternity leave, but before that, she brought, a lot of students through her programs over the course of 10 years. She was a board member of the American Herbalists Guild. She has taught all over the country at different conferences. She's a very well-known teacher in the herbal world, and she teaches plant spirit medicine, the energetics of plants. And this is something that pairs very nicely with your study of astrology. So stick around at the end of today's talk if you want to learn more about Ashley's program. And if you want to learn more about Ashley in general, if you've never been exposed to her work, though I've had her on many times, you can check out her weekly YouTube videos on plant spirit medicine at Skyhouse Herbs on YouTube. So on that note, there's one more thing I want to point you guys to on the Nightlight website. And that is going to be the upcoming webinar that we have on Neptune. So if you go to the Nightlight website and you scroll down, you click shop, you can go to our shop where we have all of our masterclass series from last year now available, including the masterclass bundle. And then if you scroll down, you will see that you can get the Pluto webinar recording if you missed it, and the Oracle Speaks, access to my new book that's being released chapter by chapter, audio and text, probably a good year or so before the print form comes out. So that's kind of fun. And what I want to focus on here is the Neptune and Love Talk. This is happening on March 14th as the sun is moving to conjoin Neptune. So another very like appropriate symbol in the sky that'll match the energy of our talk, I hope. But Neptune and love, we're going to talk about how to understand Neptune's meaning when it's involved in love and relationships in your birth chart or by transit. If you want to sign up for that, it's $20. If you can't make it live, we send you the webinar link to attend live and also a link to the recording afterwards so that you can catch up if you weren't able to be there. All right, so on that note, let us now turn our attention to the Mars-Uranus dynamic that we are looking at this week. All right, here it is. And what you'll see on the screen is, here's Mars. Here is Uranus, and the two are coming together between Saturday, March 9th, and Sunday, March 10th. You kind of see them right there between Saturday, March 9th, and Sunday, March 10th is the exact date. So let's back it up to today. Monday, March 4th. You'll see that Venus has just passed through the square at 20 degrees, and Mars is within about 4 degrees as of today. You really tend to start feeling things, according to ancient astrologers, when it gets to within about 3 degrees, which is tomorrow. So, we might be a touch early, but better. But to me, it's like with astrological transits, the degree of sensitivity that a lot of you guys have on this channel, I've noticed with transits, you'll often feel them a good amount of time before they hit exactly. So I like to get out in front of ones like this because transits like this are a little bit more intense. You're going to be feeling it really strongly. Wednesday, it's within 2 degrees. Thursday, it's within 1. And then you get that kind of prolonged action between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You could even stretch this out to 3 degrees of separation, in which case you're talking about Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So a whole week or so of the Mars-Uranus dynamic. Now, Mars in Aquarius, Uranus in Taurus, this is following on a lot of the themes that we have been working with and talking about, honestly, for the past couple of months. In Aquarius, it's that gold standard. Where can we go into the future that looks completely different? It's the kind of stuff that Aquarius, that we associate with people like Galileo, who completely change our way of thinking. Einstein. Aquarius has this iconic relationship throughout astrological history with progressive, paradigmatic changes in science, technology, philosophy, culture. And so Aquarius it already has a kind of collective aura around it. And modern astrologers associate the sign with the outer planet Uranus. Now, in ancient astrology, most practitioners of ancient astrology do not give rulerships to outer planets because the system of dignities that planets were worked into is incredibly elaborate philosophically. You can't just say, well, this planet's kind of like that sign, so let's just jam it in there to give it a home. It's this whole system of dignities is part of a deeply philosophical framework that has to be understood on all levels. And you can't just throw a planet into a domicile rulership without considering all of the other levels of dignity. So for that reason, most traditional astrologers will not give outer planets rulership. However, I'm not going to deny that there are some really interesting similarities between the planet Uranus and some of the significations of Aquarius. However, there's also plenty of really good significations of Aquarius that people mistakenly think are Uranian that are actually, from the ancient perspective, Saturnian. That's a whole interesting conversation that maybe we'll have on a separate video at some point. The main thing here is that think about the light emerging in zodiacal winter from the darkness, steadily, progressively rising up out of darkness, moving toward the point of the equinox where the light will take over. When yang is emerging from out of the yin, right, you have 2 Saturn-ruled signs in a row that suggest the idea of aiming toward transcendence. In the material world, we go through these familiar cycles. We get entangled and embroiled in all sorts of worldly matters. And that's good. That's what we're here to do. We're here to live a life. We're here to inhabit a body. But then all of a sudden we get to a point where the entanglement becomes too much, and we have to set our sight on some kind of archetypal standard so that the chaos and the tumultuousness of the material world doesn't overcome us, because that is a possibility. Just as surely as someone can get so lost in spirituality and spiritual idealism that they transcend or bypass their need to be in the body and in the world, so too can people get so entangled in the body and the world that they forget transcendence, and they forget that there are universals by means of which we measure progress in our lives, morally, spiritually, culturally, historically, etc. We can do better, we can do more is a kind of mantra that Aquarius gives us as the light is rising from Capricorn through Aquarius through Pisces out of the darkness and toward the light. One of the meanings of that rise out of darkness is let's progress, let's get better, let's move up, let's do more than we have been doing. Fantastic. Well, this is why the shadow of Aquarius is let's do better, because the earth, the body, the world, the feminine, the embodied material universe of, ecosystems and relationships that are embodied is not as good as some transcendental standard. And then there's a devaluing or even a judging of the human condition. And so the bypassing of Aquarius is a very real thing as well. You see how there's a light and dark to every facet of the journey of the sun through the zodiac that we associate with the archetypes of a sign. The light and dark is there because literally we have a combination of light and dark taking place within 12 solar steps of the year. Okay. So on that note, dog hair in my mouth. This always happens to me, by the way. That was like the most perfect timing. Like, I'll explain all this celestial shit. Oh, I've got dog in my mouth. Okay. So anyway, we're rising out of the darkness with Aquarius. Well, what does Mars want to do when it's in that sign? It wants to press the gas pedal down on things like individuation, progress, freedom, breakthroughs, paradigmatic changes. And Mars is adding a kind of muscular intensity. Let's go. Let's fucking do this, right? Like that. I'm sorry. Excuse my language. I got a little excited by Mars and Aquarius. So Mars in Aquarius is pushing the agenda of growth. It might be pushing the agenda of transcendence to the point of sort of going so fast that there's bypassing of something earthly. There's an impatience with the material condition. And Mars gets mad when there's a dog hair in its mouth. So get it, right? And then it's hitting Uranus in earthly sign of Taurus, which we've also associated with the desire for a kind of rearranging of the material world such that there is greater freedom and enjoyment, greater freedom and sensual embodied happiness, greater freedom and material security, greater freedom and maybe a higher standard of luxury, wealth, beauty, enjoyment, pleasure, etc. So the earthly and the celestial are really kind of working together to create some kind of preferred standard of security or enjoyment. Let's put it that way. Okay, so all of that together doesn't sound, I don't know. There's nothing about that sounds particularly ominous to me. However, there are some things that we have to understand. Mars, Uranus, when they come together, can be sort of forceful and impatient, and the revolution that it brings can happen through an intensity that comes with significations like accidents, the burning of bridges, provocation and conflict that comes and strikes like lightning, reactionary things that happen that can ruin or devastate things that ought to be stable. This is why, for example, Mars-Uranus will be associated with that kid who likes to skateboard, who thinks, I'm going to do this extra special trick and take it one step further than I probably should. And boom, they injure themselves. They sprain their ankle. So there is an association with this transit, the pairing of the revolutionary impulses of Uranus and Mars, as well as the desire to take the material world to some higher standard that could actually produce within us or our environments some kind of impatient, overly forceful energy that rips, tears, breaks things. And that's what people tend to get scared of when they think, even if they can't articulate all of that, people who know a little bit about astrology, they start thinking about Mars-Uranus and they go, oh God, something kind of energetic, forceful, sudden, disruptive, and potentially damaging or conflict producing is likely to happen. And yes, it is. Like, let's just start there. There's a very good chance that those kinds of things can happen. But I think that they only happen if we are not mindful. By mindful, I mean if we're not aware of the fact that those tendencies exist. I would also say, second dog hair of the day, I would also say that the problem is that before I tend to make my video for the day, I often let Hilda out of the room if she's kind of restless or pacing or just like wants to play with a toy or something, because then she'll just be doing that in the background and then I get distracted. So I give her lots of kisses and then my mouth is full of hair. Okay, so we get into the sphere of Mars and Uranus, and people understandably they freak out, right? But if we're mindful, I think it helps everything. If we talk about the energies, it helps a lot, which is why we're doing so. And also, if you have any kinds of contemplative practices, going for a walk, listening, exercising, like movement, flow, whether that's creatively or artistically or energetically and physically, matching the energy so that you are drawing your consciousness closer to it is important, because it's when we kind of just, I don't know, we sort of lethargically move around and you're like, okay, Mars Uranus is there, but I'm making zero attempt to connect with that energy, that I feel like it ends up storming the castle. That's my experience. Maybe it's a little different for you guys, but that's my own experience. So one of the things, obviously making these videos helps me a tremendous amount. I hope it helps you as well. But it's also pairing that with some activities that I know are going to be a match. Let me tell you something that apparently some shamanic traditions did in the ancient world. And I heard an anthropologist talking about this one time in New York City. I went to a talk, the guy who like lived with, oh, I'm going to forget what the name of the people were, but it was in Africa. And he lived with a group of people, you know, mostly this people were still living in the way that they had for a long amount of time, unbroken in like the in nature. So it was really interesting. And this was at a time in my life where, of course, I had been going back and forth to the Amazon and literally going deep into the Amazon and living with people who lived in the jungle for short periods of time and working with ayahuasca ceremonies. So I was fascinated by shamanic, and shaman is a word that's really just very precise word from one tradition that's used to describe many traditions. So it's not really the appropriate word to use, because there's different names for shamanic types of like archetypes in different cultures and places. But anyway, one of the things that he said was that there would be when the diviners would have like a dream or an omen that would appear, that they would do things to reenact the omen as a way of raising consciousness in themselves and other people in the community. So let's say, for example, that there's a flood dream or there's a flood prophecy or something like that. They would literally reenact a flood with like they would build like a little mini city, almost like build a city in your sandbox and then flood it. And they would do that as a way of like acknowledging the symbols and signs and omens that were maybe being received in a dream by the shaman. And then they would reenact them. And it would have a way of raising the consciousness of everyone in the community to the symbols present in the prophecy or in the dream. And I thought that was so cool. I thought it was really cool. And then the anthropologist sort of described that, you know, the idea behind this was that that a dream received from the community shaman, so to speak, becomes part of everyone, and it becomes shared. And then it however it actually comes through, however it is actually transmitted or actually appears from dream level to mundane, is thought to be midwifed into existence in more constructive ways when there's a kind of enactment of it. Okay, now I'm not saying that we're doing exactly that, but sort of, yeah, it is sort of what we're doing, right? What we're trying to say is, okay, look, Mars is square to Uranus this week, and I'm going to tell you a bunch of stuff about it in a second. Mars is square to Uranus this week. And if my awareness has been raised because of the podcast, because of the exploration of the archetypes, and if I take some time to connect with that archetype in my life this week, again, like I think a great thing to do this week is like energetic, vigorous activity that's sort of exciting and pushes your boundaries a little bit without going too crazy. When you do that and you just sort of acknowledge, hey, Uranus, I'm trying to connect to your energy this week. I think that there's a way in which we midwife whatever Uranus may want to do with respect to our karma or our actual fate or destiny. It just becomes so much more constructive because we are, in a sense, acting like a doula, right, for the psychic appearance of the energy in our karmic body. So anyway, I just wanted to say that first because the first thing I think is really important is that we think this week not so much what terrible thing is going to happen, but how can I be a channel for what's going to happen, right? So we just make that little shift of consciousness, and I think we stand shoulder to shoulder with so many traditions around the planet that I suspect probably had similar ways of receiving signs and omens that anthropologist was talking about in New York City. I saw him, this was gosh, 15 years ago that I saw this guy talk, right? But that's what I remember from it. And I suspect that many people from all over the planet have had a similar way of not standing in fear, but standing in relation to symbols as they appear. Well, here we are collectively contemplating a couple of symbols in Mars and Uranus. So what can we do? All right, now first I want to tell you a story about a Mars-Uranus dynamic that came about in my life. This was a Mars-Uranus dynamic that coincided with a dream that I had. And I think it's really important because there's a really good reminder for us in this, not unlike the story I just shared with you that the anthropologist talked about. Okay, so one of the things we have to remember is that the language of astrological symbolism, it exists. The vernacular in which it exists and which we talk about it is rarely ever a one-to-one. There's rarely ever a one-to-one correspondence with how it appears in the way we talk about it, like the astrological lingo, and the way that we actually experience it, or the way that it actually shows up. It's very different. I was recently watching, because I'm getting really excited to see the sequel to the movie Dune. And so I watched the first one again with a friend. And in the movie, the Timothy Chalamet, I think that's how you say his name, he plays something like a Jedi. I mean, that's the only way I know how to, if you haven't seen Dune, the kid is something like a mystic, and he has mystical powers and abilities. And he is probably the chosen one of a prophecy that has been around for a long time about someone who will come and change the cosmic order for the better, right? So very Luke Skywalker type of thing. And he's speaking with the head of this mystical order who's sort of testing to see where his abilities are at. And she asks him, she says, do you have dreams? And he says, yes. And she says, do they ever come true? And he says, not exactly. And it's a really important moment where you can tell that her opinion of him changes when he says not exactly. And this is really important. This is because there's a big, one of the signs or one of the symptoms of prophecy is, and this is from all traditions all around the world, is that the signs and symbols rarely ever appear in the way that they do in dreams, or in our case, the language of astrology. They do not appear, not exactly in the way that they actually show up. So do the signs and symbols of astrology actually happen? Like when we talk about Mars, does it actually happen? Do they come true? Our answer should also be not exactly. And this is why so many people misunderstand astrology, but why, if you have that answer, not exactly, you're on the right track with what astrology actually is. It is a language just like so many other prophetic languages in dreams and other forms of divination around the world, where the way that the signs and symbols speak about something that's going to happen is never exactly what actually happens. So let me tell you a story. You guys remember during the pandemic, there was a period of time, and I want to say it was probably in about 2021, where the housing market just completely took off. Well, right before this happened, uh, Ashley and we moved to Minnesota, and we were just renting at first until we could find a house to buy, and we thought we'd give ourselves a little time. Well, then we started looking at houses, and you know what it's like if you've ever purchased a home, which is progressively becoming more and more of an impossibility, unfortunately. But we were looking for houses, and we were seeing so many different houses, and all this isn't. So we were like window shopping. You know what I mean? Like we didn't feel urgent to make a decision. I had this dream. In the dream, I was standing in this elaborate, like big, like it was like a city, but it was as big as a city and kind of shaped like a city, but it was in an aquarium. And inside the aquarium were all these exotic fish, and some of them were very dangerous looking, piranhas, sharks, and all sorts of other beautiful sea creatures. And I was walking through this aquarium, which it was so big it felt like a city. And then I noticed in the dream that the glass started cracking. Now, this dream was happening as a Mars-Uranus transit was forming. And I was like, I wasn't thinking about that at all in the dream, but connected this later. And I was like, wow, okay. In the dream, I remember starting to get afraid and being like, I should leave here because it's going to break. And not only is there a ton of water that's going to come pouring out, there's all these, there's predators and so forth. So, and then I thought, I got to get out of here. I got to leave. And I suddenly found myself sort of frozen and like stuck. And I woke up, and that was it. And I was like, whoa, that was a really ominous dream. And it was one of those dreams that it was so powerful and vivid. You remember it and you go, ooh, that was something. And that's the way I talk about dreams that show up as omens or that have oracular significance. They somehow seem to be saying something, but it's never exactly what you see that will happen. Now that might seem very basic. Like, of course, I'm not going to go into the city-sized aquarium and have a glass crack and blah, blah, blah. But my point is that no one really makes the mistake of taking that too literally. You'll understand that, and then you'll see it correlate with something in life. Well, so fast forward another day or two later, as the Mars-Uranus transit is coming through, and my consciousness is being drawn toward it more. We're out doing the window shopping of houses, and our agent says, very literally, he says, yeah, I know you guys are kind of like window shopping at this point. I have to let you know, people are starting in the real estate industry to suggest that we're about to get into a situation that could be really difficult, because you have a lot of people coming in and they're starting to make offers rather than negotiating with the price, which is quite common. They're starting to just immediately offer the asking price, or they're even just making their offer significantly higher than the asking price so that they can get it. And he's like, so it's becoming like a bunch of sharks out there. And as soon as he said that, and he mentioned the window shopping and then the sharks, and he said, I think there's a shift that's going to happen. Boom, my dream. I was like, oh, yes. And then I told Ashley about it, and she's double Taurus, much more content to like really take her time with things. I'm a Taurus rising, but I'm a little bit, I have, Cancer and Capricorn, sun and moon. I'm a little bit more cardinal. So I was like, I had this dream, and the aquarium glass was going to break. And, it's funny because I think, some people might go like, or, that sounds crazy that you would base a decision on that. But no, in our world, in the world that Ashley and I inhabit, signs and omens, whether it's a stick or a bird or a dream or an astrological symbol or a plant that somehow says hi while we're out on a walk, these have always been very important to us. And I suspect most of you guys listening live life in something of a similar manner. So I said, no, I think we need to make a move, because Mars-Uranus in the sky and the dream and what he just said about there's going to be sharks out there, sort of like offering more than they should for houses. And this is going to be a problem that we think is coming pretty soon where, like we can start to see this building. He said, so if you like someplace, don't wait too long because you're about to get into like an oversaturated, overly competitive market, overly saturated, overly competitive, sharks in an aquarium. It's about to break. Oh my God. Then I said, okay, yeah. So then there was a house that we liked. And so we decided after some thought to look at a couple more, and then we made our offer, and we did that very quickly. Now, that ended up being the house that we're living in, and I'm really super happy. And we got in on this house prior to all of that madness happening, just prior, because we ended up closing on the house, and then maybe that's like a month or so later or whatever it was. And I remember at the closing, he was telling us, he was like, you guys got in just in time. You would not believe what people are doing right now. He was like, I really like have people offering more for houses before like I can even get an open house in. Anyway, so, and you guys maybe remember that all happened during the pandemic. So, okay, here's my point. When I'm sitting and thinking about Uranus and forceful breakthroughs and sudden swift decisions that blah, 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 it's never exactly like that. It is, we talk in our astrological vernacular, we use words and phrases and adjectives that we combine and turn like a jewel. But what they are meant to do is help us see within their reflection the manifest events that occur, which are not adjectives. They are events. They are not forceful breakthroughs. I mean, you could describe what happened as a forceful breakthrough, from the dream to the advice to the quicker decision than we were in the process of making that we suddenly made. Yes, you could describe all of that. But the point is that the language of omens and dreams is what we tend to get afraid of. We get scared of the language and the vernacular. We get scared of the image of the cracking glass of the aquarium. But most of the time, let's be honest, like I'd say if I had to, and I heard a very wonderful teacher of mine say this at one point, most of us live lives, where you're right in the middle with everyone else, experiencing a handful of good fortune and a handful of bad fortune in a world where we sleep about a third of our lives. Life is pretty mundane in a sense. And most of us, if you spread it out and you compare the fortune and misfortune, there's a group of people who have radically good fortune compared to others. There's a group of people who have radically bad fortune compared to others. And then probably most of us, I'm just making this up, let's say 60%, 70% of the Earth's population, in terms of the experience of a life, good and bad fortune, it's mixed. It's somewhere in the middle where we have some really good, some really bad, and it's just sort of mixed together. So what that means is that, I don't know, 90% of the time when you hear the combinations of Mars and Uranus, they will be worse when you hear them in your head in the astrological language than the way in which they actually appear. Was there anything that bad about having to make a quicker decision than we wanted to about real estate? No, I mean, that's a nice problem to have, honestly. And I've had Mars-Uranus experiences that are a lot gnarlier than that. Don't get me wrong. My simple point here is that the kind of breakthrough that you can have when you hear all this language, it's often subtler and more everyday and sort of right in the middle of the human experience than you are likely to think at first. So I wanted to share that story because I think that's exactly the kind of story that we totally lose track of. We totally lose track of all of those things when we start thinking about Mars-Uranus and all of the tearing and tearing and ripping. Oh God. Okay. So what can you expect? Well, there are forceful breakthroughs that happen, but remember, they are often of a very everyday, ordinary kind of experience. They don't have to resemble something that's like headline news. I mean, the headline news is always like a random, terrifying act of sudden explosive violence in a public place these days, right? Well, you can go there, right? But for all, like probably 99% of us listening to this will have a more mundane experience of a forceful breakthrough. So I wanted to emphasize that today. But forceful breakthroughs can be psychological, they can be physical, they can be relational, they can be professional, they can be financial. They can be in your health or your body. So just notice that the boom like that can come through this week, but maybe, the volume for you is at 50, and for someone else, based on the transit of Mars and Uranus in the natal chart, it might be closer to 80 or 90 that you're hearing that energy at. Number 3 is electric originality. I love it when Mars Uranus comes through and suddenly it's as though you're possessed by a god. It's a little bit like you're getting cosmic caffeine, and there's a big difference between cosmic caffeine and your morning cup of coffee. The cosmic caffeine it feels like you're downloading new ideas, new incentives, new initiatives, and there's a theme of taking action vigorously that comes with an electric feeling of enthusiasm and like potency. So watch for that electric originality this week. Number 4, bravado, strength, defiance, and freedom. Now, Mars-Uranus can get into the I'm invincible kind of mode. I like to say that there's a big difference between the sort of God mode of Mars-Uranus and say like, what's that song by Sia? Unstoppable? Is that the name of the song? There's like an empowered, I love myself, I can do this with Mars-Uranus. And then there's sort of like yucky, narcissistic God mode. Don't become a dick this week. So, but watch for the emphasis, the defiant emphasis on I can do this. I've got this. There's a kind of cosmic enablement of our noblest, strongest qualities. And then number 5 would be the power of individuality or individuation. Look, we take big steps forward in our individuality, our individuation, or in something that has been a goal for us. I mean, I'll never forget putting an offer on that house when we were just kind of like, woody do. And it felt good. It was like, oh my gosh, things are moving. So don't be afraid to get up off your ass and move. If you got something to do it. That's it. And so watch for these qualities this week. This has been fun to talk about. I hope that we have also I really wanted to emphasize, because this is one of those transits that could go into the bin of things that people most likely freak out about. That video series I do, how to avoid astrological burnout. Well, Mars-Uranus transits could be a whole video. So I just thought today, let's remember that if we reenact and intentionally connect to the archetype in a kind of ritualistic way, even if it's so simple, something simple, like going for a trail run with your dog, and you're like, Mars-Uranus, I'm going to vigorously meet you through my sweat. I swear to God, those kinds of ritualistic, I see you, I notice you, and I'm here as a midwife. I am a servant of the gods coming through the world. When we take that approach intentionally, it matters a great deal. And second, when we remember that the language that we are focusing on is a language of omens and symbols, just like dream images, do they happen? Do they come true? Not exactly. All right, that's what I've got for today. I hope you guys have a good one. Bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for sticking around. I'm really happy to be joined by my wife, Ashley, who is an herbalist. Hi, Ashley.
Hey.
And yeah, I'm really excited to be helping Ashley promote her upcoming program, which is something that you actually began teaching many years ago, this Herbal apprenticeship program. I think it was 2011 or 12 that it got started, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's been over 10 years I've been offering this course, and yeah, it's my favorite thing to teach.
Yeah. And just to be clear, because some people on my channel, most people know you because you pop on here or there. We talk about herbs and astrology. There's an attraction in our marriage and an attraction in the subject matter that is old. Like we've been together for, 14 years in our relationship going on. And we've always had a fascination with each other's areas of expertise. And we've done lots of things to marry them together over the years, in addition to literally getting married. And and actually, herbalists and astrologers have married the subjects of herbs and planets together for thousands of years as well. Now, your program is focused on, herbalism. It's not an astrology course, but there is certainly a lot of overlap in terms of the energetics and the spiritual approach to herbalism that you take. And so I was hoping that we could start off just by telling people a little bit about the program. You're coming to this after taking a little bit of time on maternity leave. Our kids were not yet in school. Now they are. You're coming back to work. This is really exciting. The new program launches at the end of April. I'm going to put it up on the screen so people can see it. You can find it at skyhouseherbs.com. Enrollment is open now. The course begins. You go under courses, Herbal Foundations Apprenticeship at the end of April. Tell us about it.
Well, this course, I guess my goal in redesigning the apprenticeship course that I've been teaching for 10 years is to make it even more personal and to allow people to study the material, digest it at their own pace. So, what it's going to be is a combination of kind of three main parts. The first one is the recorded material. So there's going to be modules that will be released, and people can listen to them as as they have time. The second part are live classes where we will meet live on Zoom and talk about the module, I'll answer questions, I'll give even more information about it. And then the third part is the sacred plant pairings. And so I've always taught the herbal portion, like the plant diets, one at a time, but this year I'm going to do it in pairs because I think you can learn a lot by comparing and contrasting herbs. So for every module, you'll have 2 herbs to study, and you'll get a little cheat sheet about them before you start the module. And then you'll have an opportunity to work with those 2 plants and blend them and keep them separate and just really work with them closely. Because my goal is that I want people to be able to find information that they can really use in their own lives, maybe with clients, whether they have a professional herbal practice or maybe they're a therapist in a different field, that they'll know these plants so that they can work with them really comfortably.
I love the different modules that you have just so we can preview them for people. Module 1 is Vitalism and the Heart of Herbalism. Module 2, Building Your Home Apothecary. They're so diverse. I love Module 3 is my favorite, Plant Spirit Medicine. Energetics and chemistry. You have such a holistic approach. It's what I've always loved about your teaching. You'll teach about the doctrine of signatures. You'll talk to people about how to communicate with plants, how to think of them as teachers that are living beings that have personalities that aren't just phytochemistry or whatever, but you will also teach phytochemistry. And I think that you have this really well-rounded way of helping people be intelligent about the plants, about the body, about the systems of the body, but also not afraid to use energetic systems, not afraid to take something from the kinds of energetics that ancient mystics were working with, whether that's the elements or whether that's, some of the overlay with things like Ayurveda, Chinese medicine. You take what's useful on a symbolic and energetic plane and on a personal connection level with the plants, and you marry it to really smart scientific research. I think that's rare. You don't see that a lot.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, to me, it's all language. They're just different languages that we talk about the same thing. And I think the more diverse our languages as herbalists, the more we can reach more people. And that's kind of my goal. Like, I want everyone to be able to identify plants, use plants. So we need to diversify the languages we speak so we can talk with our physicians, so we can talk with a therapist, we can talk with a mystic, right? We can talk with children, and we have a language that everyone can use.
You talk in the program, in your modules, you have stuff on digestive and gut health. You have stuff on detoxification, colds and flus, and dealing with virus seasons. You talk about tissue states, and you're talking about how to give things to your kids for helping them maybe at times even relax before bed at night. We use a lot of different things with our kids. I love this that you have called this I'm going to find the phrase where you use, and I'm going to mess it up. A community herbalist. What is a community herbalist, so that people can understand that definition? Because sometimes people might look at a course like this and think, gosh, unless I go to an accredited university for 8 years and learn all about chemistry, I have no right or business suggesting herbs to people or using herbs. That's just not true. And that's not the history of how folk herbal medicine has been used or taught. So what do you mean when you say community herbalist?
I think you said it perfectly. This is the people's medicine, and our grandmothers and great grandparents used plants as medicine. There's nothing actually that hard about the practice of herbal medicine. It's just getting to know the plants and getting to know the times when they're most useful. I really envision that this course, people can take it and, yes, use it for themselves, number one. because I think a lot changes when we have the personal experience. And then using it in your family, whether that's just, maybe making a tea for your dog, or, if you have kids, or maybe you just have a partner, maybe you have plants you can use, and we'll talk about taking care of a garden, but using it for yourself, for whoever's immediately around you, and then taking it beyond that, because it's likely that at some point you're going to be talking with someone. They're going to say, oh, I've got this digestion thing and I've tried this and this. And they might say, hey, you're studying herbs. Is there anything that you would recommend? And you know what? You'll probably have a few ideas. And that, you never know how one way that you help someone out there in the world might trickle and then help others and more people. So I think through the self-knowledge and studying this knowledge in your own body, it'll naturally, it's like, impossible for it not to spread out and start to affect the broader community.
Yeah, I think that's really important. This is also for that reason, because we have a vision. I mean, you guys know through my Kickstarter, you guys helped us build a community herbal medicine garden that Ashley's been hosting free and donation-based events out of, that the donations go right back into the garden and just growing the medicine that we then find ways of harvesting and giving to other people, or letting other people come and harvest. We have a vision, and we always have, back to the days when we had our yoga studio in Maryland. We have always had a vision of making this sacred knowledge accessible to people. And that is both there in this program in terms of the way you're framing what it means to be an herbalist. It might mean that you're a professional and you see clients, and you could continue beyond this program developing the skills to do that. This would certainly set you up for success. You could also go forward and be someone who uses what you know with friends and family and yourself. And that's an incredible set of tools to have. The program's also very accessible from both a programming standpoint and a price standpoint. I'm going to take you back over and show everybody the programs. The modules are pre-recorded, but then you meet outside of the modules for discussion, community, Q&A, and sort of development and integration. So people can attend those live. If they miss those integration sessions, they can also watch the replays of those. So
absolutely, yeah.
Anyone could take this at their own rate, as slowly or as quickly as you wanted to, really soak it in, or blaze through it. And then we can certainly, beyond this program, as Ashley perhaps makes more advanced programs available as she's easing back in out of maternity leave, can help you with further development, or recommend you to many other wonderful programs where you could continue your studies. We want this to be accessible. We want community herbalism to be, as simple as being able to show a friend a couple of yoga stretches. We should be able to show each other herbs, and just, hey, this is a helpful herb to use. Also, accessibility price-wise, we have an early bird enrollment, and we have standard enrollment. And then we have tuition level 1 assistance and tuition assistance level 2, which break out the affordable tuition into different levels of affordability. And you can kind of identify where you're at if you're someone who wants to take this program but needs to work within your means and not hurt yourself doing it. And then for those who can pay, we ask that you use standard or early bird enrollment. And that's the same thing I do for all my astrology programs. So we try to keep it super, super accessible. The Herbal Apprenticeship program starts April 24th. I know Ashley's super excited to be getting back into teaching too. I also would like to offer Ashley just a chance to tell everyone a little bit about, before we end here this interview, tell everyone maybe a little bit about your own background, who you studied with, what your influences are, and just anything else you want to say before we cap it off.
Ooh, okay. Well, I think, I started off as a kid playing in the woods, mixing perfumes and potions. And then I went on to study environmental science, where I studied organic chemistry and restoring native wetlands. And really, from an environmental perspective, that's how I got into herbalism. And then after, I realized, after working on the restoration piece and joining a lot of earth advocacy groups, that the problem's not with the earth, but with the people not understanding the value of the earth. So then I started going into holistic medicine. I graduated from University of North Carolina, Asheville, with a degree in interdisciplinary studies. And I went on to get my Oh, that was my undergrad, and then I got my master's from the Maryland University of Integrative Health. It was then called Thai Sophia. But my teachers there, I had such a great blend of teachers, really scientific minds, like Simon Mills from the UK and Kevin Spellman, who is like a chemistry genius, who's also an Ayurvedic practitioner, who studied with Dr. Vasant Lad. Um, uh, Matthew Prisco, medicine maker from Galen's Way out in California. So I had a really wonderful, diverse variety of teachers in that 3-year full-time master's level program. And then after that, I went on to study with Matthew Wood pretty intensively because I liked his energetics. I liked the way he spoke about the plants and his personal experience working with low dose, drop dose medicine. And he has had amazing um, you know, he's done such amazing work herbally with just using that method. And gosh, I could I've got a lot of herbalists in my
David
basket.
Duke comes to mind, and
Oh, Jim Duke.
or Jim Duke. Sorry, my
Jim
bad.
Duke, Margie Flint, Rosemary Gladstar is like I've only done one herb walk with her, but it was amazing. So I have shelves of herbal books and people who I just adore.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just feel really grateful that I've had that blend of the science and the energetic herbalism and the traditional herbalist perspective as well. And I try my best to blend them together and to give everyone a really diverse yet integrated herbal studying experience.
Yeah, absolutely. You get that. That is exactly what you'll get if you sign up for Ashley's program, which I encourage you to do. If this is the kind of thing that interests you, you won't regret it. It's a fantastic course with someone I absolutely love, obviously, but also like a really, truly fantastic human being and teacher of
Aw,
plant medicine. And if you want to learn more about her, see her work, get to know her a little bit, check out her YouTube channel, Skyhouse Herbs, where she publishes weekly on plant medicine, plant energetics, and also on Instagram, which is Skyhouse Herbs. So the apprenticeship program starts April 24th. I wanted to get Ashley on, brag about her program, turn you guys on to it. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I'm sure that we're going to see some people from the Nightlight astrology world getting introduced to you and all of your magic.
I would love that. Thank you.
All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.